Hello, and welcome to today's KDP University's At Home with Michael and Judith Anderle. I'm Trisha, and for the past 5 years, I've moved around Amazon's books teams, learning the business so I can share it with authors. Prior to coming to Amazon, I worked as a graphic artist, project manager, and educator. Currently, I'm privileged to work on the KDP University team, helping authors use the KDP website to make the most of their author journey. But enough about me. We're all here to talk to Michael and Judith. Michael Anderle is a million-book best-selling author known for writing the Curthian Gambit series, starting and growing the LMBPN publishing with Judith Anderle, and creating the author group 20 books to 50K. LMBPN Publishing has close to 100 series, over 1,000 books, and over 200 audiobooks released, and is currently publishing in 6 different languages. Invested in helping other authors succeed, Michael's spoken at events around the world in the last 5 years, including the United States, England, Scotland, Germany, Bali, and Australia, and virtually at the Sharjah International Book Festival. Welcome, Michael and Judith.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see if we can get the cameras working.
Good morning, Trisha.
Good morning. Thank you both for joining us. Judith, I think a lot about you was missing from that intro.
I know. I'm the shy one.
Well, if you spoke about it, but the translations, everything is all on Judith. She speaks multiple languages, so it was a natural one. And so yeah, she's been instrumental in growing us internationally.
Yeah. And just to give some context, this has been you started publishing 5 years ago, is that correct?
Yeah, a little bit 5.5 years ago.
Right. So all of this has come about in about 5 years. That's amazing.
Yes.
Now you're 100% self-published, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So you started with KDP about 5 years ago. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, in September of 2014, I wrote the first 30,000 words of a story because Judith, at the time, she had an international job that required her to travel every year. So in approximately September of 2014, I believe you went to ESCRS, which
Yes.
is over in Europe, and she's gone usually 9 to 10 days. Our boys were at home, they're high schoolers, and I had decided, for half a reason as a bucket list item, and another half because I wanted to show our oldest, what could be done, I started this story. I wrote myself into a corner. I put it into the virtual drawer, and over the next year, I reread a bunch of the stories I liked, and I paid attention. Why did I like them? What was getting me excited about certain facets of it? Following year, 2015, she goes back to ESCRS, and I pulled it back out. I really loved the story, so I figured out, you know what, I'm going to do this. And to do it, I was what I consider a whale reader. So I knew that I needed to do at least 3 stories, and I already had a background in doing advertising on Facebook or Google or whatever. So I wrote like a crazy guy, and I got my first book up on November 2nd, November 3rd of 2011, which is NaNoWriMo month. So I was already had the fever. So I wrote the next one in about 9 days, and then I followed up with a third one in about another 11 days. And so I had the first 3 books out in that November. I wrote the 4th one and released it in December. And that's when things really took off. So, from then on, I did my first 5-figure month in January, and the first 6-figure month was in approximately October, November of 2016.
So I know that everybody here is sitting there going, how in the world did you do that? I've released my book. I'm not seeing any readers. What did you do to make sure that people started noticing your books?
There was some advertising started at the 3rd book, if you will, but I honestly, in trying to look back and really figure out the puzzle, I believe what I stumbled upon was the fact that the rapid release hit the algorithm. So 1 hit, you get a few fans, precious few. 2 hit, you got more. By the time book 3 hit, I started doing advertising at the same time And then 4 hit, and Amazon supported it because it had seen growth and what's going on. So it goes, maybe I should do something. And we have a saying in 20 books, nothing sells the first book like the latest book. And so it just, that really helped. And then I poured on, basically reinvested all of the money that was going in and kept growing it really hard, kept releasing a book a month. And by summertime, it was just outstanding.
Mm-hmm. That's a very aggressive release plan, a book a month. That's intense.
What happened was, it wasn't so much a plan as a recognition that whenever I got beyond the 28 to 35 day mark, the sales significantly dropped. I didn't understand anything of what they now call a cliff at that time. So it was just a method to going, hey, the sales, the marketing seems like if you put out a book, it helps you. So it was an aggressive writing schedule for a year.
Wow. Now, Judith, when did you join the team? Because you were working full time at this in a different position.
I was. So actually, I said earlier that I'm shy. I'm actually not shy per se in the business world. But, one of the things that I think it has made the company a success is the fact that Mike and I have been able to tandem. And so my background, all of it from undergraduate business training to MBA in marketing, and then eventually a JD at law, has been focused around business and in marketing and global business in particular. So I've always been in the global industry, mainly in the medical device pharmaceutical world. And so I was very successful, but I had been in the industry for over 20 years at the time. And it gotten to the point where the boys were, to Mike's point, close to graduating out of high school. We were living in Texas for the purpose of the boys actually studying in Texas, and for me to be able to work with the company that I was working with, which it still is the #1 company in ophthalmology. And so Mike was growing the business, and I would help him with branding and ideas on the side. And he wanted me to join the company full time. But at that time, I was the main breadwinner. And I was concerned about the fact that, would I want to join a startup, first of all? In the entrepreneurial in me wanted to. However, do I wanted to do it with my husband, and did I want to do it in an industry I knew nothing about? And so just came to the point where, you just have that moment where you decide, this is what I'm going to do. Did a lot of praying and definitely decided that it was the best way to go. And since then, it's been about, Mike, we were figuring out 4 years, I think, officially, that I joined the company. And I was able to come on and put some infrastructure, into the company, because up to that point, Mike and Steve Campbell, who had joined him.
It was the Wild West.
Well, it was yes.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Agreements were, hey, I talked to him on the phone, that type of thing. And so it's been a ride. But the main, I think that the reason why we've been able to work together and been able to successfully come together and with the team, frankly, because Mike has surrounded himself with some really good people, good, kind people at heart, work hard, people who work hard. And so that's been the key to the success. And he and I work together to the point where, he's the front facing. He is, after all, the author, and he is the person who started the company. And I'm behind the scenes trying to make sure that I help where I can.
That's amazing. When did you start the publishing company? Because you publish other authors now, right? So it's not just all your content. When did you make that leap?
December of 2016 is the first month that we released additional authors. We had everything from collaborations, publishing hadn't quite yet started, but we also had some work for hire implementations. And it was that month when we branched out. So at that point, and then so all of 2016, it was or 2017, heavy collaboration. And so we started growing, and instead of putting out a book a month, we were now putting out 2 to 3 books a month. By 2018, we're starting at 5 to 6 books a month and really starting to grow astronomically. And so in 2018, I put forth to the group that Judith was talking about, which included Steve Campbell, who was from the author biz at the time, and then also Lynn Stigler and a few others that we brought in, that I wanted to be able to put out 400 books in 2019. And that was a moonshot, I recognized, but I felt like we as a company both needed to be able to have that many books in our backlist, as well as we needed to incredibly stress our efforts to find out where was the right point. We published around 332 actual books. If you include the somewhere larger books, you might give us credit for 350. We didn't hit 400, but it allowed us to, now we're at over 1,100 books in the company.
That's an amazing, I mean, in 5 years to build a business that's that large is truly amazing. And it's all done through self-publishing, correct?
Correct. Yes, it is. Everything is 100% us and the individuals that we do, and massive amount of, Kindle Unlimited.
I think if I can interject, one of the things that I saw in the video that I think resonated with what we're doing and at the core of the success of the company is the fact that we really do care about the readers. And what was driving Mike at the time was not only the success that you can gain, right? You can be financially successful, but the fact that he was reaching out to individuals who were being helped through his books. I recall a story of somebody who was in the hospital, and I believe her mother was ill. And so she wrote to Mike and said, because of your books, I've been able to connect with my mom and stuff. And I remember Mike, and I hope you don't mind me telling the story, but he actually wrote to Jeff Bezos thanking him for the fact that he had created this avenue of not only being able to be self-sufficient and being able to write your own stories, but being able to reach people and help them. And, some of the things, again, at the core of why the success, right? If I can, convey in what I see from Mike and everybody that works around us is the why. Why do we do this? I mean, we love the success, don't get me wrong. And obviously, I think growing up in Hollywood, I'm just as superficial as the next person. So I love the finer things. But at the end of the day, if you're just doing it for that, you're not going to be successful. If you do it because you want to communicate to people, because you want to tell your stories, and then those stories resonate and are able to help just one individual, KDP has been the avenue by which Mike has been able to do that.
That's amazing. I have chills. I truly have goosebumps. Thank you for sharing that story. I think it means a lot. And to hear that other authors, if we put the readers at that core, then that's where the success comes from. But you haven't just put readers at the core, you've also put other authors at the core. 20 books to 50K. Let's talk about that a little bit. When did that start? And how did that start?
In between books 2 and 3, Judith had been asked to officiate a wedding down in Cabo San Lucas for our friends. And while we were down there, I was once again writing between books 2 and 3, and I had already started gaining about $7 a day in sales for the 2 books each. And I realized that if I could write and be selling 20 books, I could be making $50,000 a year at $7.50 a day a book. And Judith had been working her whole life. I'd never thought I'd have a chance to try to retire her. But down in Cabo, it was a situation there where the same amount of money that was in our house in Texas, if we had it there, it was feasible. And so that's where the 20 books to hit 50K came from. Now, I was doing author notes back at the time, and I was sharing a lot on Facebook. And I had a few fans who were really interested in the indie side. And I said, I'll tell you what, I have this goal, 20 books, 50K. Let me go create a Facebook group that we can all talk, and we can carry our conversations outside of the fans who just wanted to talk story and characters. So I went up there, created it with 4 different authors. And at the time, there was a website that was, for authors, and there was a lot of communications and things going on. And I really didn't, it seemed cliquish at times. And I didn't really, as we would say in Texas, I didn't cotton to that too well. And so we had the 4 people. I taught them what I could. We released books, and I should say we was they. They released books, and they all were in the top 10,000 at the time. And so from that, it was like, you know what? I can probably do 4 more people by myself. I was on the other website, and I had been given a lot of flack for the success. And so I said, hey, if anyone else wishes to come over here, I'll share what I can do. I'm happy to share. I'd love to have other people be able to, do anything from make enough money to pay for Infamil. I know how expensive that stuff is. And if we'll just talk business. We're not going to talk craft, and I'm not going to allow people to try to sell, because authors are the nicest people from their hearts. And if they had 99 cents between going and buying a book, or maybe buying the the thing they need to buy, they might get the book. So I banned any sales on that, and it's a nonprofit. And we went to 80 people over a weekend, which totally shocked me. And I had to reach out to a bunch of fans that were helping me and go, hey, can you help me with this thing? And it has grown so much more from them. So, right now we're at about 57,000 people.
Yeah.
And the one thing, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Judith.
I was just going to say, again, at the core is the information sharing. And one of the things that Mike didn't mention is the fact that when he was at that other website at the beginning, he was sharing. He was sharing, hey, this is how I'm doing it, and this is what I do. And so he had a lot of naysayers saying, first of all, you're full of it, right? You're not, these numbers aren't real. And they were. And also, why are you giving this information away for free when, it could be charged? And so, at the end of the day, that's why he said, I'm going to go and on my own. If anybody wants to follow me, I'll share the information. So 20 books to 50K is that information sharing. And it's very tempting with the numbers that they have now. What are you, over 50,000 individuals? It's very tempting to monetize it, right? Coming from the pharma world, I've had friends who say, especially with the meetings in Vegas, well, you guys could be making a lot of money with this. And we know, obviously we could, but that's not what that's about. With all due respect to the individuals that charge, because obviously they charge because their expertise is valuable and they're there all the time. But for this information sharing platform, it's just people learning from each other and helping each other out and rah-rahing each other and championing each other's, goals and paths that they take.
One of the things that I love about it is it's positive. There's so much positivity on that site. And to your point, that sharing and people just getting started and the ability to self-service and learn, I think is just such a bonus to other authors who have joined you.
The people who do it right now, Craig Martell, who heads up the admin and everything else, those people put in an amazing job and time and effort to keep that there.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, because of Craig, we have the conferences, right? Because when the first, I remember when I left the company I was with, and before joining LMBPN, I was asked to scope out because Craig had volunteered. He raised his hand and said, fine, everybody wanted to have a conference. Mike said, that's not my belly wagon, so I'm not going to do it. So Craig said, I'll do it. Coming from the military and having business expertise himself, he volunteered to do it. And they didn't have a venue. So they asked me to scope out a venue. And so within a couple of months, we had a venue at the price range. They always wanted to keep the price low because they wanted to make sure that it was affordable for the one author who was struggling. And so then ever since then, it's grown exponentially. But I'll tell you, all kudos to Craig, who really took on that challenge and has developed it with a team of volunteers that he has, and it's gone really well because of their efforts.
Now let's go back to, I know that I'm seeing so many questions coming in, and a lot of them are around marketing, right? So they want to know, we touched on it just briefly when you figured out, oh, if I rapid release, then this happens, right? A plus B equals C. What other things did you do early on to start marketing your books? So talk us through some of the business choices you made early on.
I already had experience both in building websites and building and using Facebook ads. I definitely went out to doing Facebook ads and creating an awareness of the books via Facebook ads. And everyone's going to talk a lot about algorithms. Some will say that they don't exist, even though they're well documented that they do within Amazon. And I believe, the goal there in the algorithms themselves, so they are little digital salespeople. If they push a book or a book is pushed 10 times and they recognize that it's bought twice, well, they're going to go out and try to push that book too. And so it really is an opportunity to go out there and do it. Now, what's happened since I did was Amazon ads. And Amazon ads, quite frankly, if you're going to only have one arrow in your quiver, I'm going to suggest people use Amazon ads. Why? You don't have to worry about any sort of image manipulation whatsoever. You have the cover of your book. That's it. Now, speaking to that, the actual image of your cover is so important. It really is a situation, a book by its cover. And if your book is not to market, meaning that if you look at the top 100, which is very easy to do on Amazon, of the genre of, that you're trying to push, and goodness gracious, if you have a multi-genre book, there's a saying that I ascribe to in our company, which is if you have a multi-genre book, and we do, you only market to one of them. Don't confuse the readers. So my first book is a paranormal vampire science fiction action adventure mashup, but I only actually focused on the vampire in the beginning. And so, we were able to really push. So I would go into Amazon advertising. It's the minimal amount of knowledge. And I like to say that, the fact that how much I know right now that's not what I knew back in the beginning. Yes, I had some advantages, but I can just shortcut that situation, go to Amazon advertising. KDP is going to have information on this. Get about a $5, if you can afford it, get a $5 ad spend a day. Get people going in. Make sure you say in the front of the back and the back of the back, join my email list. Those people are going to help grow you. Easiest way to do it, right? Be social, or rope your spouse into being social. But one of the things that those readers who reach out and find brand new authors, they're there also to say, are these people kind of cool? Well, if you're not saying anything, which, let's admit it, a lot of authors are very much introverts, then you're going to be hampering your ability to use one of the best ways, which is the engagement between the author and the reader. My author notes back in the beginning were relatively new on the scene because I was actually having a legitimate conversation with the fans at the end. Why did I do it? Okay, this is a little bit self-serving, but I did it because I wanted someone to know who I was. And if I had maybe had kind of a little mess up in my story, they'd forgive it because I was a good guy. But it really turned into something so much more, where the engagement with the readers was a lot higher. And so I would hear stories of people going, I'm reading your books, I'm in the bank, and I'm telling the people next to me. I was telling the people in the grocery store. That's something you can't duplicate, and unfortunately it does require that energy of being able to talk with other people. So I would go down those steps, quite frankly, and then you can start before you release your book. There's nothing to stop you from doing an advertising spin. And if you know that your books are, I'm going to grab Alona Andrews, the husband-wife team out of Austin, as an example. If you know your books are going to resonate with those types of readers, then give away a chunk of their books and see if you can get email names and say, hey, by the way, I'm also going to be doing this, and I hope to reach out to you, and go from there. Those are some of the ideas. So we can get into more because we have a large amount of marketing we do.
I think it's so, that's the key, actually. I hear a lot when you look at the other side of the international, people say, well, I want to have my book translated and it'll sell. Likewise, the formula that Mike had about communicating, about marketing, was the formula that our first translator took, Jens Schultz, when we started in Germany. He was a fan and he really liked the books. He had a business already of translating, so it was easier for him to kind of get into it. But at the bottom line, it was that communication with the fans. And so Jens took that same, emulated it, and started communicating in German with the German fans. And that's really what takes your books to the next level. And we're doing that now with French, Dutch, Italian, Portuguese. Where Dutch is the first one. We're working with an author, an established author himself, Eduard Meinema, and he was established and decided, I want to do something else. I want also some promotion for my books. Why don't I translate successful series? And so, but he found out as well that that communication is key. So we have Alan BPN in Dutch, and he didn't want to do that social media himself, so he had his daughter take over. So now his daughter's communicating with the fans. So to Mike's point, it's key, it's important. And if you don't want to do it, wrangle in your kids, or a cousin or somebody to start doing it for you.
Right. Then it becomes that family affair.
Yeah.
Get everything going. So let's talk a little bit more about that. What was it like? This is totally for Judith. What was it like when Michael was just getting started and started writing? How did you support him? What were you able to help him with?
Well, first of all, I didn't know he was doing it. We were literally, everybody, I would be busy out of the whole day. And so then we would meet up at night, right after the kids were in bed and everything. And so I'd be in bed watching television, and I saw this, he would be typing away. And at first I thought it was for his business. And at one point I turned around and I said, what are you typing so much? Who are you writing to? And he says, oh, I'm writing my book. I'm like, your book? And he says, yeah. He says, I'm publishing a book. And I go, and this was going to be his third book. And I have stories about how miscommunication there. one recently happened, but anyway, so I was like, what? So it started then. And so then now that I knew that he was publishing, right, and I say that in quotation marks because I really didn't know to the extent, and he did say he was making money. I started telling coworkers, oh, you know, my husband's writing, and they all, like everybody else, maybe a few years ago, not so much now, were like, self-published, what does that mean? Oh, you mean he doesn't have a publisher? Oh, you mean, oh, you know, so they didn't realize what it would turn into. And so he would ask me questions like, I have a character who's doing this, what do you think? And so, you know, I would say, you know, she needs a dog, because, you know, everybody loves having a dog. And he would tell me about Bethany Ann, who was the main character. And I said, well, what do you think? Well, why do you name it Asher? So that's the kind of assistance that I was giving way before I joined the company. And when he started formalizing it, I said, well, you need a logo, you need branding. And so we started talking about that. And before I joined the company, a year before, when he was kind of trying to get me to start, I said, well, what's your 5-year plan? What's your growth projection? You know, and he was like, what are you talking about? You know, and so that's the kind of thing where I just started helping in guiding. And I, as a matter of fact, we have a picture outside of his office for his first talk out in Austin, and I was there. And so I was there, you know, to give support, to help him, and just talk about a lot of things that, you know, come natural, or because of my training and background and education, I was able to convey and help him out with before I even joined the company.
So this is going to be for both of you. A lot of authors that are listening in may be like, well, we don't have that background. I don't have a background in social media. I don't have a background in international business. So how do they get started? How do they start making those choices that are going to help them grow their business and find that readership?
My first one was to decide that I needed to focus on only one company. And I chose the 800-pound gorilla and go, I'm going to go with Amazon. I'm not suggesting that wide, which naturally is putting your books out on other ones, is a bad decision. I'm merely stating that if I have to learn, I need to learn one. And Amazon was the one I chose to learn and be on. And from there, the different parts will come naturally. It's like, what are the massive parts? It's like, do you have a good cover? Do you have a good title? What does your blurb look like? Which is more questions, not an explanation of what your book is, because you want people at the end of your blurb to go, I'm interested and I need to know the answers to this. And then so they do the look inside. Do you have a good, you know, have you used vellum or something else in order to make sure your inside looks good? Is it solidly edited, or have you used enough of the tools to make sure that it is solidly edited? Because you don't, which I did get, you know, plenty of discussions on the beginning editing, and they don't go away. You can have a book re-edited 7 times properly, and they're going to go, I looked at the first reviews, there must be something I missed. So, you know, you go out and you put a really good product. Then it's really, I like to say the life begins after you push the button. After you push the publish button, all of a sudden it becomes real, because you have something that you can actually work with, that you can be out there notifying people, you need a second book. Series by and large have become a lot more profitable than just trying to put out singletons. It can be done if that's the genre of your choice, but then you just search for, how do I sell a single mystery book? How do I sell? So asking and learning where the questions are is 70% of the way to getting the solution, because now you can use Google to find it, because there are so many things. You know, KDP University, how many different things do you guys have up there on training? But one aspect of something that's questioning is, it's hard work, people. Don't assume you can select, you know, put on anything. It's hard work. 3.5 years, I took off 2 days. That's it. So that was to do my race. And that's one thing that I really want people to understand. You're not competing against others. There are people who are making so much money and selling so many books with so many fans I've never heard of before. And I study a lot from the business side. So you're there for your race only. The information's there, 20 books to 50K. You don't have to talk to a soul, just search. And your questions, 98% of the time, have already been asked. Do it at what's going on here. If you need anything with print on demand, take a look at it. You know, so it's, the information's there. Be aware the information is there. And if it isn't, by some strange situation, it's a question away. So just get involved and get moving forward. Just do it.
Yeah, you know the saying, how do you eat the elephant, right? A piece at a time.
Yep.
You know, just start slowly. I mean, I know people listening might say, you know, to your point, oh my, it's overwhelming, right? And that's one of the concerns that I always have, and that's why I don't talk a lot about my background, because I did put in a lot of years of schooling and studying, and then there's a lot of history of work in order to get to the point where I am right now, just like Mike. And so rather than think of how do I sell internationally where I have 5 different languages translations, just start with your book and do the best you can with your one book and start learning how to market it and start that, and that everything else will come. And but ultimately, like anything else in life, it takes effort, right? You know, we'd be lying if we said it's just as easy as pushing the button and the book sells on its own. You are going to have to put some effort into it. And if your heart's not in it, maybe that should tell you something.
Right, right. The other thing is you've talked a lot about your team. So even before Judith joined the company, Michael, you had a team that you built. And we get a question all the time. Where do you find a team? Where do you find those people that can help you if you're, if your sibling or daughter or husband or wife or, whoever it is, partner, they don't have any skill set or interest in doing that. Where do you find that team that can help you be successful?
For me, it was a recognition when I recognized that it was going to be too big for me to be able to handle. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it and I said, okay, who's the right fit? And first I had to understand what's my role. What are my skills? What are my talents? What can I do? And now, believe it or not, because that leaves a whole lot of things I don't like to do. Like I hate it. And quite frankly, it was broken up easily into operations and creative. I love the creative side, the building the stories, all of that was a lot of fun. The actually putting everything up on KDP, as easy as it is, and having to deal with the metadata and looking at the keywords and making sure this got updated. I hated that stuff. And it just so happened that there was a podcast by the name of the Author Biz and Stephen Campbell, and I had been interacting with him. And so one day I kind of called him and got a hold of him and I said, this is what I'm thinking, that there needs to be a creative, a visionary, the person that's going out there and doing this. And then there's a person who has what I would consider all of the yucky stuff, right? So I didn't know why anyone would want to do this stuff, but he said something that was kind of amazing to me is I look at it as a puzzle. He does. All of that stuff, he goes, I will get in there. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to put something in place to make sure it works. Then I'm going to give it to somebody else and go to the next puzzle. I'm like, oh, so that's how you have fun. Because until I understood how you could have fun, I was like, I have no idea what you are. You're just a creature from the other side. And so from there was a recognition of what role did I need to support, and then look around and go, okay, who had that passion for this industry and the ability to make the pieces that we did not. And so from there, the question is, how can you go find them? Well, are you in a community? Mm-hmm. Are you seeking anything that's going on there? A person doesn't have to have the love of books. I mean, Judith was burned out in law school from reading. My turn not to say if I'm not saying too much, but you used to read for fun, but once law school happened, it was toast.
Yeah, no, I used to read Great Expectations for fun, and I read it actually in Paris again. So that's the kind of reader I used to be. And then that was pre-law school. After law school, I had read so much I couldn't even read people. It was yeah.
And so from there, though, but what has she brought to it is just she understands the bigger picture. Now, what are the specifics? I've noticed other husband-wife teams where one is the creative, but the other is the one who craves the business and the ability to go in and learn different aspects of it. Mm-hmm. But we're all learning. The thing is, unless you are super aggressive on trying to release, and I would have some caveats to that one, but unless you're going to have plenty of time to learn between the releases of books, because even some of the fastest, and I've known some incredibly fast writers, you still have time in between the book releases to do something like that. And one other gotcha is don't grow too fast. One of the only reasons LMBPN was able to grow as fast as we are is because we had the income to do it. We made some very, very expensive mistakes, and we were able to cover them because of the income. Unfortunately, others might go and do aggressive, but they don't have the income to cover a mistake. And mm-hmm. So it's something I just warn people and go, look, books have been around for centuries, kind of expect them to continue being around for centuries. and grow at the appropriate for your race.
Yeah.
Don't try to go faster or slower than someone else that you feel. If your personality is to go out there and get it, okay, good to go.
Yeah. But I think the main point was, how do you build a team? You network. You have to network. Ultimately, it comes down to that, right? Because that's the way that, otherwise, just sitting in your office and not talking or not socializing is not going to get you a team. And then you got to think about it. Do you really want a team? Is that really what you want? Or are you okay just doing your own books on your own? Because some people, don't want to work with other individuals, and that's fine. Again, it's your race. To Mike's point, it has to be your race.
Right.
Are you very nitpicky? Are you really a nitpicky person, Trisha? Are you? You can find VAs to do the little pieces, and like at McDonald's, where they went out and they documented every little thing that they wanted to do, documented, find a person to do that little piece. Yep. That's not a team per se, that's resources to help you do it. Yep. So that's not how I enjoy it, but there are many people I know who are very successful who do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I won't talk about my SOPs that I write and hand off to other people.
Oh no, SOPs. Hey. I was just a couple of weeks ago saying, don't talk to me about SOPs. 1.2, or have you signed off on the 1.3? Right. Oh my gosh. Oh no. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll avoid that conversation.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a lot of questions that are coming in, and I know that we won't be able to answer all of these, but let's get to some of them. So we have a question from Hans in Austria, and wants to know if, I can't even read this morning, what's going on. I'm still stuck in those SOPs. Is it always better to use the same keywords or different ones to optimize the search results? What are your thoughts on that?
A couple of different ones. If you're within a series, I would certainly mix them up a little bit, because the people that are finding book one are not necessarily, they don't care about the keywords. A couple of other things is, if you've got books that have been there for a while, consider going back and redoing your keywords, which will, in some instances, recheck what Amazon computers are doing and pop you into something other areas. Do be aware in their software to help you what genres and subgenres that you can possibly fit in that are weak at the moment. Meaning that maybe they were popular 2 years ago, everyone assumed they were still popular today, no one's really putting books into them. So you can always kind of freshen up your garden by going through there and doing a de-weeding, if you will, of your keywords and switching to something else.
What tips would you give a novice when it comes to advertising on Amazon, Facebook, or other venues?
Well, it's similar to what I said before. If you have limited time, have limited funds, or limited knowledge, choose one. If you're going to go into social, if social is, Twitter upside that, which I don't, find the social that makes it work for you. Because, I chose to limit what I was doing. Facebook was my choice, not Twitter, not Instagram, not this, not that, not the other. Which of course I ended up getting a little bit of flack for. Why aren't you on these other ones? Time. I have no time. And so that was, a little bit of what I would say on that. Judith, do you have any comment on that side?
No, I agree. You have to choose the one, right? It sounds self-serving and pandering because we're on the KDP webcast, and Mike keeps on mentioning Amazon, but it really is, for him, it was Amazon and Facebook where he was. Just yesterday, I was watching Celebrity Family Feud, which that's the kind of show I watch. And it was interesting to me that one of the celebrities was this young lady from TikTok. And I'm like, oh. And she had like 1 million something followers, which of course makes her a celebrity, but TikTok, who would have thought that, on a show like that, where they usually go after, the movie stars and everything, a TikTok influencer was a celebrity, and they are. So if your belly wagon is TikTok, and that's where you really promote yourself there, do what's best for you. Pick the one area where you're well at and good at it, and go for it, and become the expert in that, and then everything else can expand.
And so my daughter turned me onto that social media site, and we won't go there. A lot of time wasted on there. But
have you done your dancing yet?
Yeah, I did one of those with her, and then told her not to post it. I was like, oh, that was terrible. I have no rhythm. It's terrible. So Rich wants to know that, or he's saying that writing a book every month and publishing is aggressive. So is there a target word count that you have every day? And then how do you edit and proofread and go through all of that and get it up that quickly?
Well, so that is, I guess, one of the things that differentiated LMBPN back in the beginning is I wouldn't take what was normally expected as allowed. For instance, the first time that I was doing some editing and I was reaching out to editors, they're like, well, you can schedule me in about 6 weeks. And then I'm going to be another few weeks after that before I get you back the book. And I'm like, no, I finished on Monday. This is going on Friday. So what happened was I come from an IT background and we had something called just in time. And it really had to talk about the features that was, what we're doing was just in time to facilitate it. But how I modified that is we ended up pulling together fans who love the series. And I said, hey, would you go behind me? So as I'm writing the first 3 to 5 chapters, when I'm done, I'm giving it to the just in time fans. And we used Google Docs at that time. And to some degree basically still do. But what happens is they're actually editing at the time book chapters 1 through 5 as I'm writing 6, 7, and 8. When I finish on Monday, and let's say it's a typical 25 chapter book, when I finished on Monday, they would have the first 18 chapters done. And then so in the next 2 days, and this is somewhere at that time between 4 and 8 people were doing it. So by Wednesday, they're done. They're done with the book. And I had a final pass, and Stephen Russell was a gentleman that was heading that up. So I had one person who's managing 8 other individuals, all using the power of the internet to come together, find and fix mistakes. So he would fix the ones and then talk with me because I'm not, in my stories, I want the story to be there, but I'm not that particular about word A or word B. That's just my personality. And so it fit well with a rapid release schedule because he can make choices. And then he would take a look at it and say, okay, gun, pistol, we're using pistol. And then the other capability, but then of course, anything that there was any question, he would come to me on those. And that is where we grew from being able to release my books within a few days and to the editing team with Lynn Stigler, who then created, behind her, another part of the editing team. And even with a production schedule of on average 18 news stories a month, we're only at 4 weeks between drop off and release. And one of those 4 weeks is the pre-order, which I highly suggest people consider pre-orders. And if you only have one book, we'll get the cover for book 2. Put in the pre-order, you can put it up to a year out. That's going to help. So anyway, that's an aside. And from the editing, so we built our own style of editing infrastructure at LMBPN. And at one point, this is back in 2018, Linda says, and came and told me, because I know you want to do 400 books, so I built the ability to do 2 million words of editing a month. Okay, sounds good. That's what the team comes back and says, I saw the vision, I understood, she went off and did it, and just came back with the results. And that's the team that we're talking about, being able to understand what that means for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the main thing is that the earlier description was aggressive, but aggressive for whom, right? It's all a matter of your pace. Is your pace, and to what extent do you want to get the feedback back from the editor? To what extent do you want to go back and forth, or do you want to be like Mike, who trusts Lynn, and Lynn says, "Hey, I think these changes should be made." He's like, "Okay, go ahead, make them." So it's just a give and take. And again, it's your race. So, if the pacing is too fast, if you hear a pacing of a Michael Anderle is too fast for you, don't worry about it. You're not Michael Anderle. You're you. You're you.
There's different genres. So let's go back to the question of how many words. I went and studied the genre I was releasing into and felt that 70,000 words was a good, solid release schedule. If you're doing epic fantasy, you're back in the 120 to 180,000. You're not releasing those. But what you do when you study the market and across the different genres is you realize that epic fantasy has a longer cliff, right? It's not 30 days, it's 90 days, 120 days. Epic fantasy is almost an evergreen product, which is why we're putting stuff in there. So you almost have to, I would have to ask you, what genre are you speaking to? And then I'd have to understand maybe a little bit more about, is this a new genre that's up and coming? Is this, what is going on? We've seen so many things happen, wonderful things, but we've seen so many things happen, and we recognize that it's, I want a house. How much is it going to cost? Well, I'm sorry, is that 4-bedroom? Is that 5-bedroom? Is it 1 bathroom? Do you have marble? Do you have wood? There's so many questions to actually answer that. But a couple of other caveats was, well, Kate, if you're in Kindle Unlimited, that book one is, 100 in a series. Let's clarify that. If it's in a series, book one is going to be 100% of the chance of the people, because that's where you're filtering them into. I would probably put a few more words into that one, because that's going to get you the most money, versus, consider what's going on later. How many words did I write a day? For 2 weeks, I didn't write freaking anything, because I was burnt out, because I had a rush on the last one. And now I had 2.5 weeks to write the latest one. So some of those words, were 8,000 word days. One moment where I completely burned myself out was 19,000 words in a day. Never tried it again. Never want to do it again. I'm merely stating that I got myself stuck, and then you release the book and you're like, oh, this is fantastic. Go have your celebratory lunch. This is fantastic. Oh, I don't want to write. And you're back in the same boat I was. I didn't write for 2 weeks. I'm under the gun. That's how I got through that.
I just can't even wrap my head around that. I can understand why you were burnt out.
So was I watching him.
Yeah.
There's so many, I consider them cute now. In the time, book 9, I killed a major character. I'm really weeping hard, and I'm going to Judith, and I'm like, and she's like, are you crying? Yeah, you have to understand. Wah!
Yeah.
The sympathy of spouses, isn't that great?
Oh yeah. I took out Snoopy and said, you remind me of Snoopy, who, typing his little typewriter, crying. So.
It was just funny in retrospect. I wish I could get one of those little Snoopy crying typewriter things. I'd put it up on the wall. It's fantastic, but it's a unique experience. And so I understand when authors get together and they're trying to commiserate with each other of what needs to happen. And so we had, I think I answered all the different ramifications: words per day, burnout, so it's what I wanted. But you have to realize maybe that some of the things that drove me at that time, I had tried to build entrepreneurial companies for 35 years. Gotcha. And so I knew what failure or non-success looked like. And when success is staring me in the face, I went after it with everything I had. I desired it that much. So do recognize that some of the things I accomplished was because I had a fire behind me, and I wanted that opportunity, and what I felt was the ability to have my own future in my hands. And I craved it like I craved food or whatever. So there's a difference. If you don't have that, and that's great if you don't, I'm not suggesting you need it, just recognize that where are you going to pull this from? And mine was 35 years of non-success.
Yeah, but if I can, from a spouse standpoint, right? If there's in the audience people who are saying, well, my spouse doesn't support me, you also have to understand that we were in a unique position. We were, blessed, it still are, but at that time, I was the main breadwinner. I was in a highly successful industry. I was paid very well. And so we could afford for Mike to have that passion and take the risk. And I'm finding out through these podcasts the expense risks that I wasn't aware of. But nonetheless, we could afford to do that. So if you find yourself and your spouse is saying, and maybe there's a concern, it's valid. Because if you don't have the means to put that risk, it's something that you need to consider and think about, and maybe go slower, go at a slower pace where you can afford. You go at the pace that you can do it. Yeah, follow your race, and follow your race at what's going to be comfortable and happy for both of you. And even if your spouse doesn't join you in the business because they have their own thing, that's fine. But just know that if you don't have that rah-rah, or if you don't have that financial ability, not everybody has it, and it's okay. Do it slower.
Right. Now, you mentioned earlier Kindle Unlimited. So we have a question here about how to effectively use Kindle Unlimited and the promotion. So there's Kindle Countdown deal, and there's the free promotion within KU. How have you found that to make those successful for you?
So let me talk to just a little bit of that, and also about the algorithm as well. So the algorithm is going to benefit over days. I mean, The history between Amazon and how things work change all the time. Why? Well, Amazon changes all of the time. And so, what's happening this 6 months might not be, by the time someone listens to this, it might have changed some. What are some of the different things we do? Use the fact that you're going to get 70%. Even if you drop to 99 cents, now you're getting a few more pennies. From a sales perspective, the sales training is people rarely appreciate what they get for free. So maybe 99 cents and getting a little skin in the game to them to buy it is worth more than going free. However, what are your tactics? Is your overall strategy to get the word out, get your name out there a little bit? Maybe free is something you need to do. So you have these opportunities that are going in there related to these. One of the things that we've done is we have multiple series. Well, we typically don't focus on books 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 before the end book because they're in the middle. Well, why not use some of these just free? Amazon will pitch your book for either reduced or free to everybody when you put them in there, and you're not doing anything or even costing anything except going in there, setting a few days. Try that. We've seen little blurbs because when someone sees book 4 free, but they don't have book 1, guess where they're going to go? Book 1. And so it's something that you can do to continue keeping the whole series top of mind is, something I believe and I look at. So there's box sets, always putting out a new product if you can. So when we know that we have a series that's going to be 9 books, we'll look at doing a box set of book 3, book 6, book 9, then all of them. We preach to the heavens. If you have a complete box set, put the word complete in there. There's one facet. It's kind of like free. It's the one word that everyone seems to be really excited about. So use that word. But going back to the 99 cents and the different things is we look at doing our opportunities over time. Can we keep our advertising up for 10 to 12 days to find out if it's successful? Oftentimes you won't have a clue if the Kindle Unlimited page reads are going to hit until day 10 to day 11, day 12. And when they do, you're just like, oh, thank goodness, here we go.
All right, so we've got about 5 minutes. This hour has just flown by. But so we're going to do one more question, and then I want to give you an opportunity to talk about how people can either be a part of 20 books or how they can reach out to you. And I just lost my question. Hold on. Sorry about that.
And now, what is it you often say?
I know it's a good one.
From
the tap dance.
The tap dance.
The tap dance, yes. There you go. What are we doing?
Yes.
All right, I know what it was. I can't find it, but I'll paraphrase. If brand new author, what is the first thing that they should do in order to start advertising and marketing?
Let me add one other piece. When you have your first book, do you really like your first book? Have you been listening to everybody else, and by the time you have your book, you're like, I don't want to read this? If you can create a book that you love, then you are the target market. And Judith will tell you that that anything you want is, who is your target market? When I did my advertising, I was the target market. So when I created ads, guess who I created the ads for? Me, because I liked my book, thankfully. And so one of the first things you need to do is, before you do your ads, make sure you love your book and your story, and then create ads that you would actually be excited to see. So I hope that was a little bit of the road less taken, but I do believe that that's really what goes on. Is so many times authors don't trust themselves to write the book, and they should. And it's your book, and when you create, and your first series might hit or it might not, but if your second series hit or your third series hits, and they're all series you're proud of, guess what? If they like this set of books, they're going to like the other ones. But if you chase what's popular, you're going to have a lot of times in the future that's going to be a problem. So the first thing for a brand new author, make sure you like your book and your story, and then find out what other areas and fans. Look at the also bots, which was a big deal as a whale reader for me. If I liked John Conroe, well, what other authors were also bought authors for him? And I would go search those authors out, and then find out in your reading list, just you yourself, go find the authors you love to read and target them as potential authors of fans who would read your books. I hope that helps.
I think so. I think that that's a good suggestion. I think couple of things that I think we've seen as far as a trend in what we've been talking about today is definitely one, trust yourself, write for yourself.
Mhm.
And two, you're the brand, right? It's not the book. It's not the book cover. It's not, you're the brand. So being comfortable with that and then asking for help from others.
Mhm. Networking.
Definitely. Speaking of networking, so if somebody wants to, we've got a lot of questions going, how can I find 20 books to 50K? So how do they find that?
Exactly
On
like
Facebook,
that. 20 books to 50K.
yeah, 20, books, TO50K. Now there are questions, get into the group, answer them honestly, and just recognize in general, there's only 2 rules. Don't self-promote. Don't try to do anything like that and get around it. And the other one's don't be a jerk. I used to say it a little bit more bluntly.
He used to name an anatomy. And so,
Right.
yes.
But we've matured in time, and so don't be a jerk in there. You can listen. You don't have to actually engage. Most people don't. Just see what's going on. Please, for goodness sake, if you have a question, please, 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 just go and search for the answer first. There's a big frequently asked questions. Go read that. It's a nice BA in publishing if you read some of this stuff, and it's constantly changing, constantly being updated. There are incredibly wonderful people, and I hate to say it, but there's been probably 10,000 people kicked out because we don't. My opinion and what I set up in the beginning was we don't suffer anything. If you're being a jerk, you're out because your mother, your dad, your brother, somebody should have told you not to be a jerk. It's not our job to teach you. And if you understand it and you want to come back in, the admins and everything will take a look at it. Generally speaking, let you in. Don't mess up the second time because it's free, people. There's nothing, we don't gain anything by anyone being in there. So giving anyone a headache, what's the benefit?
Yeah.
Right.
So, but
It's
other
all
than
about
that,
goodness. It's all about goodness. Just be good.
be a good person.
That's
Just,
all.
so anyway, they'll let you in, be an author. It's there. Please, please, please. If you want to meet us, we're going to be, we live in Vegas. So the whole 20 books in the Vegas thing, we're here every year for this. Yeah,
Yes.
come on out. Come and see it.
Yeah.
I'm not as available as I used to be. But that part of that is because I'm emotionally worn out, quite frankly. But we have, I don't know if people realize Robin Cutler, who helped create Ingram Spark, is the president of LMBPN Publishing Worldwide now. We pulled some massive people. There are a lot of people you can do and get in touch with. And then there's a, reach out to support@lmbpn.com. Ask your question. It'll get routed to somebody that's appropriate. Promise you.
Yeah, we have a newsletter, so sign up. I'm sure Steve would appreciate that we mentioned the newsletter.
Okay, so repeat that one more time.
Yeah, lmbpn.com, and there's a sign up for a newsletter. And if letters, all these letters, just remember London, Madrid, Barcelona, Paris, New York. So if you think of the top cities.com.
Top cities for publishing,
yes.
Very popular for publishing. Yes. Come out. We've moved to, it'll be our first year on the Strip since, COVID last year. So we're going to have an amazing time and there's just a lot of energy from, you'd mentioned, Tricia, about the energy that's there. And we have, the smaller publishing companies, oftentimes they come out and they have their people join them in Vegas, not necessarily to do anything other than it's an indie fest. It's what it's become anyway, and, we just try to bring in people to facilitate relationships.
Yeah.
Easiest way to say it.
I think it's, Mike, you said it. If you're looking for the tribe, right? You finally found your tribe. So that's usually
the very first time.
If you're an introvert, come out. There's a lot of introverts, and together you'll become extroverts.
There are. I was there the year before. Everything shut down, and there are a lot of introverts because everybody who's watched this before knows that I'm one. But it's amazing how many people you can talk to, those elevator conversations, hallway conversations. It's not just sci-fi, fantasy, it's all
romance.
genres. Right.
Yeah.
It's everything.
Nonfiction. We
Right.
at one time a couple of years ago, it was announced that there were, I think, 1,000 authors who had made over $100,000 on Amazon KDP. We had 10% of them there. You know.
It's a fun time.
Yeah.
All right. We are actually over time, but I can't thank you two enough for joining us today and sharing all of that knowledge. It was really wonderful.
Thank you,
I
Tricia, for
appreciate
having
it.
us. Really, and we appreciate everybody's time. So thank you.
Yes.
Perfect. And as always, happy publishing, everyone.